the convoy that never should have arrived. Subscribe now if you're ready for the kind of true crime story the Bureau of Prisons doesn't want you to hear. Like, comment, and share before this one disappears. The convoy thundered north through the Susquehanna Valley under a bruised January sky, 3 Bureau of Prisons buses bracketed by black SUVs. From the outside it looked like a routine transfer, but inside the lead bus were men whose names echoed through court transcripts and sealed indictments: organized crime lieutenants, a former Aryan Brotherhood shot caller, a cartel moneyman who'd turned state's evidence but then gone silent. The destination was Allenwood's high-security federal penitentiary, a place designed to swallow troublemakers whole. Locals along Route 15 saw only the flashing lights and frost on the asphalt. They didn't know that one of the country's most delicate prisoner moves in years was rolling past their barns and gas stations. At the same hour, 2 Pennsylvania state troopers were logging an odd dispatch. A stolen maintenance van had been found abandoned just 6 miles from the Allenwood gate. Inside were cut shackles, forged credentials, and a disposable cell phone wiped clean. It looked like the kind of kit you'd expect from a low-budget movie about a prison break, except the FBI evidence techs were already on the scene, bagging everything as if it were radioactive. Someone, somewhere, had been planning something far bigger than a single inmate's escape. Whether it was a message to the Bureau or a grab at one particular prisoner, nobody knew. Allenwood itself rose out of farmland like a gray fortress, razor wire, gun towers, and an eerie hush broken only by the clang of distant doors. Officially, the high-security penitentiary was meant for difficult inmates who didn't quite fit the ADX Florence profile but couldn't be trusted at medium security. In reality, it had become a crossroads for men whose grudges stretched across gangs, states, and decades. Lawsuits had piled up over alleged excessive force, medical neglect, and the diesel therapy practice of shuttling problem prisoners from one penitentiary to another until they broke. Guards called the place the last stop before the hole. Among the prisoners on that January convoy was Rafael Rafe Dominguez, a logistics man for a Mexican trafficking network who had mysteriously refused witness protection. 2 seats behind him sat Marcus Mac Fallon, a former Philly enforcer tied to 3 unsolved contract killings but acquitted in court. Both had been moved without warning from different facilities just days before. Even the officers escorting them whispered about higher-ups making the call. The manifest listed them only as separation cases, special handling required. Inside Allenwood, Warden Claire Norwood, one of the few women ever to run a high-security federal pen, was already on edge. She'd received a cryptic memo from Washington the night before: expect convoy, security level red, do not disseminate roster beyond need to know. She'd ordered lockdown drills, swept the Sally ports for contraband, and doubled perimeter patrols. Yet she couldn't shake a sense that she was being set up to fail. 2 months earlier, an inmate informant had slipped her a note alleging that a contract had been placed on a federal witness scheduled to arrive at Allenwood soon. The memo from D.C. gave no names, but she suspected the target was now on that bus. The convoy rolled through the final checkpoint just after dawn, tires crunching on salt and ice. As the first bus hissed to a stop inside the secure gate, a siren wailed, not the usual arrival horn but the shrill alarm that meant a breach. A tower officer had spotted movement in the outer perimeter ditch, a man in a maintenance uniform carrying something metallic. The guard shouted into his radio. Shots were not fired but a K-9 team was dispatched. By the time they reached the ditch, the man was gone, leaving only footprints that ended abruptly at a storm drain leading under the access road. While officers scrambled, the prisoners were hustled off the buses in shackles. Dominguez kept his head down, but Fallon scanned the yard with a look halfway between curiosity and recognition, as if he'd been expecting someone. In the processing area, an intake officer found a folded slip of paper hidden in Dominguez's sock. No words, just a crude map of Allenwood service tunnels with one route highlighted in red. It was quickly sealed in an evidence bag and rushed to Warden Norwood's office. By mid-morning, federal agents from Harrisburg and Philadelphia were on site, asking pointed questions about staff rosters, tunnel access keys, and who had approved the transfer. Norwood realized that every answer she gave only deepened the mystery. If this was an escape plan, it had been designed with insider knowledge. If it was a hit, the clock was already ticking. Then came the break. A prison plumber, checking an unused corridor beneath the education wing, discovered a hidden stash wedged behind a loose air return panel, 2 prepaid phones, a bundle of civilian clothes, and a photograph of Dominguez taken just weeks earlier at his previous facility. Whoever planted it had known exactly which inmate to target and exactly where he'd be housed. The stash had been placed there before the convoy even arrived. Norwood stared at the evidence under the harsh fluorescent lights of her office. The photograph's back bore a single handwritten word, "Tonight." The convoy had reached Allenwood, but the real operation, the one nobody outside that office yet understood, was only hours from unfolding. Inside the wire. By dusk the sky over Allenwood had turned the color of gunmetal. Floodlights snapped on across the yard, throwing hard shadows against the snow-dusted ground. Warden Claire Norwood stood at her office window watching the high beams sweep the fence line. The stash under the education wing and the word scrawled on the back of that photograph, "Tonight," left no doubt, something was coming. But what? An escape attempt? An assassination? A test of her prison's weak spots? She convened an emergency command meeting with the captain of security, the Special Investigative Service, and 2 federal marshals who'd driven in from Harrisburg. Maps of the complex spread across the table. The service tunnels snaked under the penitentiary like veins. Maintenance shafts, electrical chases, air returns. Most were blocked or monitored, but a handful remained open to staff for emergencies. Every entry point was keyed, but the marshals warned that keys could be copied, staff coerced, or locks picked with insider help. Inmates whispered about ghost routes no one admitted existed, remnants of older construction long since hidden behind walls. In the segregation unit, Rafael Rafe Dominguez sat on his bunk, head bowed, palms pressed together. He'd been placed in a single cell for his own protection, but felt anything but safe. He knew the map found in his sock would make him look complicit. He also knew that months earlier he had told DA handlers he feared retribution from a rival faction of his own network. They had shrugged off his warnings. Now here he was at Allenwood, cut off from the outside, his name circulating in whispers like a death sentence. Somewhere inside this prison, or just outside it, a team was moving pieces on a board he couldn't see. 2 tiers down, Marcus Mac Fallon was already making friends. He'd been assigned to the general population, where his old contacts from Philly and New York gave him instant credibility. Word spread fast that the ghost of South 4th Street had landed in Allenwood. By evening, an inmate messenger slipped him a folded note during dinner. "Tonight. Laundry Hall. 2200. Fallon read it once, burned it with a match pilfered from the kitchen, and smiled. He didn't know whether it was a trap or an opportunity, but either way he would show up. At 9:15 p.m., Officer Hernandez, a veteran with 20 years in, made his usual rounds near the education wing. His flashlight beam cut across the empty corridor. A faint clatter echoed from below. Pipes? He bent to listen. A door clicked shut somewhere deeper in the tunnels. Hernandez radioed it in, voice taut. Seconds later his radio hissed dead. He reached for his key ring but found his hand shaking. In his gut he knew he wasn't alone. Meanwhile, in Norwood's command center, a bank of monitors showed nothing unusual. The yard was quiet, the cell blocks locked down, staff accounted for. Then a junior officer pointed at one screen. Camera 14, Laundry Hall. A grainy figure in civilian clothes moved across the frame, head down, moving fast. Another figure followed, then a third. No staff were supposed to be there. The footage flickered, cut to static, then resumed with an empty hallway. Norwood felt her stomach drop. At 10:05 p.m., a muffled thud rattled the laundry hall door. Guards converged, finding it ajar. Inside lay a duffel bag stuffed with restraints, duct tape, and 2 tasers missing from the armory. No people. No footprints on the waxed floor. Only a hatch at the back of the room gaping open, its padlock neatly cut. Dominguez, alone in his segregation cell, heard faint vibrations through the concrete. Footsteps? A door closing? He pressed his ear to the wall. Voices, low and urgent, speaking Spanish he recognized but couldn't place. He banged on the door and shouted for a guard. No one came. In the tunnels beneath the prison, Fallon moved quickly, his pulse steady. The note had given precise directions. Left at the steam valve, right past the sump pump, up the maintenance ladder to the old utility corridor. Ahead he saw a dim glow. 2 men waited, faces half hidden under caps. One handed him a phone. The screen displayed a single message: time to settle accounts. Fallon felt a cold weight in his stomach. He had expected a weapon or a bribe. Instead he was being given a choice. Was he bait or the trigger? Up in the control room, Norwood ordered a full facility lockdown. Sirens blared. Inmates pounded on cell doors as lights cut out, leaving only emergency red glows. Officers raced to seal every exit from the tunnels. Federal marshals descended a stairwell with drawn weapons. But the complex was a maze. For every door they sealed, another vent or ladder opened onto a blind spot. Then, at 10:37 p.m., a staffer monitoring the perimeter cameras gasped. On screen, just beyond the outer fence near the storm drain where footprints had ended that morning, a white maintenance van idled with its headlights off. A rear door slid open. A man in a maintenance uniform emerged from the darkness carrying what looked like a body slung over his shoulder. Norwood slammed her palm on the desk. "Who the hell is that?" she demanded. No one answered. The camera zoomed in, but the face was obscured. The man dumped the limp figure into the van, climbed in, and the vehicle rolled away toward the tree line. Inside the prison, a head count began. One inmate in segregation, Dominguez, accounted for. Fallon's cell, however, was empty. Vanishing point. Snow began falling before dawn, soft and silent, covering Allenwood's razor wire in a white shroud that hid nothing and everything at once. Federal marshals and Pennsylvania State Police sealed the roads within a 5-mile radius, stopping every truck and van. Helicopters with infrared cameras hovered above the Susquehanna River, their beams scanning frozen banks for tracks. Inside the penitentiary, Warden Claire Norwood worked on No Sleep, the photograph with the word, "Tonight," still on her desk like a taunt. Marcus Mac Fallon was gone. Dominguez was still in his cell, shaken and silent. Yet someone had used the storm drain escape route and a maintenance van to spirit a body, or a decoy, off the grounds. By mid-morning the FBI had established a command post inside the prison chapel, where the acoustics were bad but the sight lines were good. Special Agent Henry Calvert took over the briefing, pinning photos to a corkboard, Fallon's mugshot, Dominguez's intake picture, a grainy still from the perimeter camera showing the man with the limp body, and a map of tunnels and drain lines spidering outward under the fence. "This was not an impulsive act," Calvert said. "Whoever planned this had inside information and months to prepare. Our working theory, a contract hit or an extraction. We don't yet know which." In the segregation unit, Dominguez finally asked to speak. When marshals arrived he looked pale, his hands trembling. "They told me they would come for me," he said in a low voice. "Not to kill me, to take me. They think I still have the ledgers. I don't." Pressed for details, he hesitated. "Names?" one agent barked. Dominguez stared at the floor. "If I say the names, I die anyway." The agents left frustrated, but Norwood sensed his fear was real. She ordered him placed under constant watch. That afternoon a search team found a discarded uniform and a burned cell phone in a culvert half a mile from the prison. The van was later located abandoned under an overpass near Milton, doors hanging open, no sign of a struggle. Fingerprints wiped clean. Tire tracks leading to the interstate vanished under new snow. It was as if the earth had swallowed Fallon whole. Back at Allenwood, the SIS combed through visitor logs and staff rosters. Two anomalies jumped out: a maintenance contractor with a fake social security number who'd done emergency work on the laundry hall ventilation the week before, and an internal email approving Fallon's transfer bearing a forged digital signature from a bureau official who had been on vacation at the time. Someone had built a Trojan horse out of paperwork and walked it right past security. Inside the inmate population, rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Fallon had flipped and the feds staged his disappearance. Others whispered that the cartels had broken him out to use him against Dominguez. In the yard, men traded speculation like currency. No one knew the truth, but everyone sensed that something unprecedented had happened. Guards noticed old gang rivalries flaring, debts being called in, codes being passed under doors. The whole penitentiary felt like a live wire humming before a storm. Norwood's deputy urged her to lock the place down indefinitely. She shook her head. Lockdowns breed panic. Panic breeds riots. If they wanted chaos, we'd be giving it to them. Instead, she implemented rolling shakedowns of cells, random staff searches, and 24-hour perimeter patrols. It was a high-wire act between control and explosion. 3 nights after the escape, a letter arrived at a Harrisburg TV station addressed simply to investigative desk. Inside was a flash drive. The station's producer opened it on a secure machine. It contained one video file. The footage was shot in a dim room, the camera unsteady. A hooded man spoke in distorted Spanish. "Allenwood cannot hold ghosts. The man you call Fallon is gone. Next time your witness will be too." In the background, barely visible, was a tattooed arm with a distinctive scar. The same scar Fallon had received in a bar fight years earlier. Whether it was live or staged was unclear, but the message was unmistakable. When the video surfaced, Norwood's phone rang with calls from Washington. Senators demanded answers. Headlines screamed, "Federal inmate vanishes in Allenwood mystery." Conspiracy forums lit up. Families of other high-profile inmates flooded the prison with calls. For the first time in her career, Norwood felt she was no longer controlling the narrative, only reacting to it. Dominguez, still under watch, became withdrawn. He stopped eating, pacing his cell like a caged animal. One night a guard found him scribbling on a piece of toilet paper. It wasn't him they wanted. "It's me." When asked what he meant, he refused to elaborate. The scribble was confiscated and logged as evidence. At the FBI command post, Calvert pushed a new theory. This wasn't an escape for Fallon, he told the room. This was bait. They took him to draw out Dominguez, or to make him panic enough to give up something. They're destabilizing the entire facility to get at a single target. If we don't get ahead of it, someone inside is going to end up dead. Norwood listened in silence, staring at the map of tunnels. In her gut she felt the next move coming. The first act had been a disappearing man. The second might be a reappearing corpse. And then, just before midnight on the fourth day, a perimeter sensor near the old utility shed triggered. Guards approached cautiously, weapons drawn. In the snow sat a single black duffel bag. Inside was a Bureau of Prisons uniform, blood-stained gloves, and a key ring labeled Education Wing Access. No note, no prints. Only a small USB stick taped to the zipper. Back in her office, Norwood inserted the drive into a secure laptop. A single file opened, a photograph of Dominguez taken inside his segregation cell hours earlier, with a red circle drawn around the vent above his bed. Beneath it, 3 words, "Tomorrow he falls." Ghosts in the vent. A winter dawn bled pale light through Allenwood's narrow windows. Snowflakes still drifted in the yard, masking the tire ruts from night patrols. In her office, Warden Claire Norwood stared at the USB stick and the message, "Tomorrow he falls." It wasn't a threat anymore. It was a deadline. She ordered the vents above Dominguez's segregation cell sealed and moved him under heavy guard to an observation room with no overhead ducts. Every staff member entering the area was searched and logged. Still, she felt like she was tightening a net around a phantom. Special Agent Calvert returned from a briefing in Washington with grim news. The Bureau's internal audit had confirmed at least one compromised employee in Allenwood's maintenance department, but the identity was still unknown. "Whoever our mole is," Calvert said, "they're still feeding updates to whoever's out there. And if the goal was to destabilize Dominguez, it's working." Dominguez hadn't slept in 2 days, muttering in Spanish about ledgers, betrayal, and the ghost. Guards worried he'd collapse before anyone could find out the truth. Norwood decided on a gambit. She leaked, through carefully staged chatter and earshot of inmates, that Dominguez would be moved under U.S. Marshal escort to a secret facility that night. In reality, no such transfer was planned. Instead, she set up a sting. A decoy prisoner dressed like Dominguez would be moved through the tunnels at 2,300 hours, flanked by armed marshals, while surveillance teams lay in wait. If the conspirators were still inside the wire, this would flush them out. As darkness fell, snow muffled every sound. In the decoy operations command post, monitors glowed blue. The decoy, a burly marshal in a hood, was led down the tunnel, 2 guards at his side. At first nothing moved. Then a faint metallic ping echoed from the far end of the corridor. The lead marshal raised a hand. Suddenly the lights cut out. Night vision cameras caught blurred shapes darting from a side passage. 2 men in black masks, one with a taser, the other with a silenced pistol. They lunged for the prisoner. Before they reached him, floodlights blazed on and armed marshals shouted commands. The ambushers froze, then bolted back toward a maintenance hatch. A chase erupted through the tunnels. Footsteps slapped against wet concrete, radios crackled. One assailant slipped and was tackled. The other vaulted a pipe and vanished into a shaft leading to the old storm drain. When marshals reached the drain, only a rope hung down into darkness and icy water rushing below. No body. No tracks. In the command post, the captured man's mask was ripped off. He wasn't an outsider at all. It was Officer Hernandez, the veteran guard who had reported the odd noise days earlier. His eyes were wild. "You don't understand," he rasped. "They have my family. This was the only way." He refused to say who they were. Norwood felt a mix of anger and pity. The mole had been under her nose all along. Meanwhile, in his secure room, Dominguez heard the commotion and pressed his ear to the wall. For the first time since arriving, he smiled faintly. "They missed," he whispered. Then he asked for paper and began writing names. When agents retrieved the sheet, it listed offshore accounts, shipment dates, and a half-dozen names of mid-level operatives in his network. "This is my insurance," he said. "Protect me and you get them." Hours later, a breaking story hit the news. federal authorities had thwarted an attempted abduction inside Allenwood, arrested a compromised officer, and secured a major cartel witness. But behind the press release lay a darker truth. Marcus Mac Fallon's fate was still unknown. No ransom demand, no confirmed sighting, only the taunting video and a handful of rumors. Some said he had been executed for botching the job. Others whispered he had been offered freedom in exchange for delivering Dominguez's location to the highest bidder. Weeks passed. Security at Allenwood tightened. Dominguez was quietly moved under heavy escort to an undisclosed facility. Hernandez cooperated partially with investigators but never revealed who had coerced him. And then one spring morning, an envelope arrived at Norwood's private mailbox. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. Fallon standing on a beach somewhere tropical, face turned away, a newspaper with that day's date in his hand. Written across the bottom in neat block letters, "The Ghost Walks." Norwood stared at it for a long time, then slid it into a folder marked Unresolved. She would never know whether Fallon had escaped, been turned, or become part of some deeper game between rival factions. But she did know that Allenwood, the quiet high-security pen, had become a stage for something larger, a reminder that in the world of organized crime and covert deals, prisons are not walls but crossroads. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it.